This week, Tokyo was in the news.
Sure, there was the Olympics, but this year they were overshadowed.
By COVID, by drama, even by tech.
I'm Steven Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward.
I'm Alexis Cordato. Let's launch.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, Steve.
So I have to confess at the outset of this particular pod, I wouldn't have done the Olympics, but you kind of like laid breadcrumbs and were like, hey, this is actually really interesting. And so it forced me to do a whole bunch of reading and thinking that I hadn't done. And it's just flippin' fascinating this year.
I have to just disclose at the top of the show, I'm like way biased. I love the Olympics. It was something that growing up, I used to watch with my grandparents. Like, I just feel like it's one of those television moments that I really used to look forward to. And I guess similar to award shows, I just love the spectacle of it. I love like the global unity, the tradition, the pomp and circumstance, the athlete stories. I'm an Olympics junkie.
Well, and you're overseas, so how's it getting to you? Let's like
on television, and that's the best part. Spaniards care about the Olympics. Americans care about the Olympics. Germans care about the Olympics. My relatives in the Philippines care about the Olympics. The Olympics just won their first gold medal in weightlifting.
So you watch it on TV, like actually
on
live?
TV. It's like the only linear broadcast that I like watch, and I get to watch it live because it airs like prime time on NBC, or I guess Peacock, in the US. But because I'm like a little bit closer to Japan, time zone wise, I actually get to watch it like in the middle of the day before the work week starts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't watch live TV as a matter of course, but like, not the only thing that's making it into my little social media bubble is just the Simone Biles story.
Yeah,
which we'll save for later in the pod, because let's not start with that because it's all we'll talk about. And I think so let's just begin with kind of an overview of some of the data, some of the changes and technology, which is also fascinating. And I have an opinion about that as a non-athlete. So you'll have to wait and see if you agree.
Okay.
So let's just go through this. This is from desertnews.com, and they kind of just lay out all of the various technologies that are, bigger this year. So let's just start with biometric data. How does that, as a fan and an audience member, how does that impact you?
It's funny. I guess as someone who does not track biometric data, like it's not additive to me, but I can see how like data junkies probably are really into it.
I guess data junkie sports fans don't strike me as they fit in the same box, but maybe they do.
I mean, it's just some of it is like, okay, like seeing an athlete's heart rate as a data point when you're watching. Like, first of all, these are Olympic athletes. Like, their baseline, like, heart rate is probably really different than the average American. So it's hard to even understand, like, is it high? Is it low? And it almost is distracting, I think, from what they're doing.
So here's a clue about me as an athlete. So when I was in college, I briefly joined the swim team. And I remember,
did not know about that.
I remember quite clearly swimming, and I was a pretty good swimmer, and getting about midway through a couple of laps or whatever it was, and the coach saying, do it again, and me turning around and swimming and realizing that I was going to be physically exhausted and unable to swim somewhere. The likelihood that would happen at the end of the pool was far lower than the likelihood that would happen in the middle of the pool. And that I would then drown.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally that I had so rationalized the danger relative to the joy of swimming that I got out of the pool and I resigned the swim team.
Wow.
That was so not built to be an Olympic athlete. I am not. Thought about it way too much thinking, not enough swimming, was what my coach said to me as I was leaving.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
I can trump you on in terms of like that a swim story. My best friend wanted us to try out for like the local swim team, like at the YMCA, and I was so slow. I wasn't drowning. I was just so slow. The lifeguard thought I was drowning and actually blew the whistle to save me. So that's how my tryout went.
So, listeners, if you're tuning into this week's podcast to hear about our great stories of Olympic triumph, you may have accidentally chosen the wrong podcast this week. All right, but I am a television person, so this next one is very interesting to me. The increased panoramic coverage using high-speed 4K cameras.
Unlike the biometric data, the shots, like the camera angles, like this is where I think it's insane. Like I've been watching all of the gymnastics events, and what they can capture is like someone will say do a vault, and like the recap they'll show is not even just slow motion, but it's almost like a 360 slow motion somersault, and you can really see the performance and the intricacy of the routine. It's wild.
This article describes it as the Matrix.
Yes, it's exactly like that. It's so cool.
So this I get the idea of much deeper, much more granular visual information, and theoretically there are little glimpses that you'll be able to choose your own adventure as a viewer. I guess the Quest has an app for certain users who have one particular cable system that allows you to control which cameras you're watching, but it's still not that, you know, you're not in master control choosing the shots yet.
Right.
Which has been promised for what, 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So next, 3D athlete tracking. Viewers get real-time insights and overlay visualizations during the sprint events. And then there's a whole bunch of numbers. The Olympic broadcast system said that Intel and Alibaba have teamed up to develop a new 3D athletic tracking technology. I'm not sure I understand that as how that's fundamentally different than high resolution photography. 3D tracking.
That's what I don't understand. I don't know if they're also like referring to like these aerial shots, like where you can really see the runner in relation to the pack. I don't know if that's the 3D tracking they're referring to.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, a couple things. Cooler clothing from Ralph Lauren, which I think, given the fact that the media has finally woken up and started reporting climate change this year, it's like I don't think the solution is cooler clothing. I think it's, you know, I mean, that made me a little sad. And then Olympic robots.
Yeah. And this is almost predictable given it's in Japan.
Japan likes companion robots.
Yeah.
I'm at CES a couple of years back, I met a companion dog robot that I have to say I briefly considered. It wasn't even that expensive bringing home, and then I realized my actual real life dogs would hate the companion robot and be jealous, and so I did not bring home.
I mean, I think it's just so fun. Like they're using these robots to basically retrieve the items, like at the track and field events, like a javelin, which is like an amazing use case for these.
Although, isn't that like the job every kid who's going to help out at the Olympics wanted to have? Isn't that like ball boy at the U.S. Open?
For sure, but maybe like
I'm sorry,
pandemic though.
Yeah,
but maybe not this year where like you know it's a pandemic and there's not even a lot of like local support on the ground to have the games.
All right, so moving on, there's this USA Today article that basically lays out more data and more to both NBC viewers and Olympians. And it kind of lays out with some granularity the data access. I guess
I'm torn on this one. So I watched a lot of like the swimming events, and one of the data points that they actually show during the meet is the speed of the swimmer. And again, I can see how understanding an Olympian's speed in the pool is something that is interesting, but there are kind of like two issues I have, which is one, we're not on the metric system like the rest of the world. So when I see like 1.7 meters a second, I'm like, I don't even know what a meter is, which is like embarrassing. Or I have to think about it.
Oh, that must have been quite a meeting at NBC.
Yeah. It's just like, it's a little confusing, right? For Americans who are not on the metric system, because they're showing the data points. And then the second part is, I don't know if it's almost like a little bit of like a spoiler alert. Because again, you're like, when you watch a race, you just assume like, okay, the person who's going to win the race is the fastest person. And so if the entire time you actually see a number that's showing someone's speed, it's actually almost telling you like, okay, this person's going to win.
What if they get tired at the end?
For sure. But I mean, I guess it's like, it should almost show then who is accelerating and decelerating. So I don't know. I think it's like, I think I would probably appreciate like maybe the plus or minus or the green or red to show if speed is changing than the actual speed itself.
The swimming events this year, and I have been watching a couple of them, are delightful. The winners are delightful because they're not these superstar big name. You've been hearing about them for years. They're these, particularly in the women's swimming. They're like, I mean, they're just genuinely impressive up and coming athletes.
Although Katie Ledecky though is insane. I mean, if you look at the 800 meter like world's best times, I think she had like 24 of the top 25 scores.
And she's from Alaska?
Yeah, like so, yes. And she's so dominant.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, another question I always wonder about was like how some of these countries that, like when I close my eyes and think of swimming, like Alaska does not come to mind. I mean, there was one Olympic-sized pool in the state, and that's where she swam.
She was born in DC. There's someone else you're thinking of who's from Alaska, whose name I'll pull up. She's from DC, Maryland area. Usually what happens, I think, by the time you're pegged early as like Olympic material, they send you to a facility.
Right.
Like so all of the gymnasts train in like Texas.
Right. Upstate New York at Lake Placid is the Olympic Training Center for, I think, Winter Olympics. Not
right.
So I get the data. I get it more from, I guess, a viewer perspective than I do from an athlete perspective. And here's my, and listeners can jump into the chat and disagree with me or add feedback here, because here's, I think, what I worry about. If I'm an athlete and I understand my body, I understand how it works, and I've trained, and all of a sudden people with numbers start coming in with charts and saying, at this second, your shoulder is 1 degree further rotated than it should be. We'd like you to rotate your shoulder back 2 degrees at this second. Maybe that kind of input is valuable, but my reaction would be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like my brain is like I guess I'm not sure I understand.
Not in a competition setting, but I think in a training setting, absolutely. They're scrutinizing every single aspect of their body and performance.
Yeah.
Just
I
like
would say that makes
how much they're bending their knees when they push off the wall. Like everything makes a difference. How spread their toes are. I'm sure they look at everything.
I get all that, and this is why I threw in my Olympic swimming career early.
Yeah.
So now let's get to some numbers from an audience perspective.
Not good.
Not good.
Spoiler alert. Not good.
Which I find surprising. I mean, given COVID and everyone kind of still trapped in their homes to some extent, or looking for kind of some escapism or some mental journey, you would think the Olympics would be huge this year.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's like enough like unity, and there's just a lot of fatigue. I mean, I think we saw this too with award season. Like pomp and circumstance, celebrating others, sitting down to watch an actual television broadcast. Like, I think people are drained. Also, I think psychologically, it's the 2020 Olympics, which in some ways makes it feel really dated. Like, 2020, I'm over it.
Really?
Anything associated with 2020, I think people are just like, well, that's the past, no more.
So they couldn't rebrand it. They couldn't just like swap it around and call it 2021.
No, they already like printed all their stuff. I think it was like honestly, I think it was like a branding marketing thing.
Yeah. So the numbers are terrible. So this is NBC CEO Jeff Shell says we had some bad luck. He said the linear TV ratings were lower than the network expected. According to Nielsen, the opening ceremony in Tokyo drew 16.7 million viewers on NBC, accounting for both live morning broadcast and the replay in prime time. The smallest audience for opening ceremony in the past 33 years. It was down from 265 million who watched Rio in 2016 and 40 million who watched London. Here's what's funny. Not only did I not watch the opening ceremonies, but I didn't, no clip of it, nothing made its way to me, not a frame.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like a perfect storm of a lot of things. You have a ton of negative sentiment on the ground, like in Japan. Like people in Tokyo are actively protesting that they do not want the games happening. Right. So you have that. You literally have advertisers like who are not running Olympic ads in Japan because the sentiment is so bad. They're running Olympic ads in other markets, but not in Japan. And there are no attendees. Like I again, when I say I'm like an Olympic junkie, 3-4 years ago, I had in my head that I was going to go to Japan to be a spectator and watch these Olympics in person.
And by the way, nothing from the president, right? Nothing from Biden.
No, and also nothing from Obama. Usually Obama, anytime an American does something incredible, like he usually says something. And maybe he's going to wait until after we win all of the medals or something like that. But he didn't even say like good luck to the US team. Michelle Obama came out in support of Simone Biles, but Barack Obama did not say anything Olympics oriented. Well,
yeah, I think that the instructions he's getting from the White House on essentially everything is stand down and say nothing.
I mean, right. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. Like, I really think the communications memo is COVID, vaccinations, American safety, infrastructure bill. Yeah. Anything else is a distraction.
I think that's right. And by the way, good for them for being that disciplined.
Disciplined.
All right. So we've got 10 minutes left. We got to talk about Simone Biles. I have to say, my understanding of her story has changed 3 times in the last 3 days.
What? In the
Yeah.
last 3 days?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us the evolution. Where'd you start? Where'd you go? And now where are you at?
So when she said, I'm not in a good headspace, I put that in with the beach volleyball women saying we're not going to wear ridiculous bathing suits anymore, and the woman runner who got caught with marijuana in her blood test, and the other woman, the tennis star, who, this is going back before the Olympics, who didn't want to do the press conference, and kind of put it in a bucket in my head around athletic empowerment. Like, I am not your monkey. I don't know. I'm not a performing animal. I am a real human being. If I can't be in the right headspace, I'm not gonna risk my life for the entertainment of you. And I was like totally up with that. I was like, fine. Then I listened to a New York Times, The Daily, about her, and did not know that she was one of 4 children of a drug addicted mother, and that she ended up in foster care, and that she lived a really hard life, and that essentially the first time that she got into a gym when she was 6 years old, everyone who saw her knew instantly that she had magical powers.
Mm-hmm.
Was immediately able to have what's called air awareness, which I'd never heard of before, as a 6-year-old, that is not teachable. She just understood where her body was when she did. And I was like, okay, that's new information. Mm-hmm. Had never heard that story before. And then I think I knew, but somehow, because it's hard to keep track of a person's entire biography, had forgotten that she was central to the Larry Nassar horrible scandal.
Yep.
Which is, so all of a sudden she becomes, for me, a much more dimensional human being that survived not 1 but 2 unsurvivable personal life stories, and survived them both. And it just makes me like, and if you listen, not to the media, not to the social media, but to what she says when she says, I'm not going to be in this next event, she says it with such confidence and such clarity. Mm-hmm. There's no pity me. Oh, I don't feel good. It's like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not ready for it. It's bad for the team. I'm going to go cheer them on. And she's absolutely rock solid. Just an amazing human being.
If you read, listen, or consume any content from gymnasts, what they describe her as suffering from is the twisties. Have you come across this in your research? Yeah. So, like, some coaches will describe it to like a non-gymnast as like when you have vertigo, let's say, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh my gosh, I have to like sit down. I'm like panicked. Like, but it's so much more extreme than that. It really is almost like if your mind and body are disconnected, and now all of a sudden you're running at 20 miles an hour, you're 15 feet in the air, and you literally don't know where you are. And so that's what was really, really alarming when she competed in the first gymnastics event at the Olympics. She did a vault, which she's incredible at. And when she landed, she almost fell forward. Like, she took like a giant, giant leap forward. And it was so atypical of her. And it's almost the kind of thing, like, if maybe it were any other athlete, they might have like fallen and like snapped their neck. But for her, it really was like an error or a mistake. Like, she could have scored a 15.6 normally on it, and she scored like a 13, right? And that rocked her. And that was when she said, I'm not competing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, everyone forgets that like all of the gymnasts, like in recent history, have been sexually assaulted by their doctor, and in some cases have really not had psychological safety from their coaches. And so to tell these women that they're not resilient or they can't hang or they don't have the mental grit is like it's actually absurd. It's an absurd criticism when you actually look at all of the facts and what they've endured.
Now, I have to say I've tuned out 99.9% of the hateful garbage because again, what I know about myself is I generally won't make judgments about things unless I can read deeply enough to understand how I feel about it. But then there was this comment made by Michael Shea. Now, he claims he was hacked. I don't know that
I don't know. I think, I mean, this was what, yesterday or 2 days ago, who's getting canceled like big time over this. Yeah.
I mean, all right. So let's unpack this for a second. First of all, he tends to say fairly horrifically objectionable stuff as close as he can get on Saturday Night Live. So that is his voice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it was like a timing thing, and then it was a timing thing. I think it's the fact he's like a black man. I also think it was like referring to rape. Like it was just it was really, I think, poor taste, poor timing, just not good.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that I worry about, and I would ask you this as an Olympics fangirl purist, is the nature of social media and our connected world now so forever kind of made it impossible to have a pure global pro sports entertainment experience?
It was really interesting is if there's an article in the Washington Post. I didn't pull it in advance, but one of the winning platforms for the Olympics is actually TikTok. There are a ton of Olympic athletes who are posting personal content on TikTok. So Sunisa Lee, who won the Olympic gold all around, she posted like a video of her like dancing in her room, just like a regular 18-year-old would, like getting ready, winning. Her that one video got 18 million views, which is more than the opening ceremony.
All right, that's that. So I have not thought about looking at TikTok as an Olympic filter. That's interesting.
There's great behind the scenes content. It's almost like the Olympics director's cut or like a view of the Olympic Village through the lens of the athletes. It's like very, very entertaining. Highly recommend.
You know why I love doing this pod with you? Because when I slip into these little moments of negativity, you're like, or there's a positive point of view. Like I'm like, yes, thank you. What a lovely way to end this pod. That's a very nice beat. We have more Olympics to watch next week. I will watch them with this new lens. I will watch them on TikTok or elsewhere. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.